bring on Tracy Sandler, CEO of Fangirl Sports, has been at every single practice, was covering the 49ers in Las Vegas this weekend. I know you're very busy, Tracy, so I appreciate you taking your time out for us here this morning. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
We're doing great. Evan Giddings in for Matt Steinmetz with Daryl the Guru Johnson and Tracy. The place we want to start is kind of the preseason game and just ask kind of what you took away from the overall 34-7 defeat, but I think specifically the two quarterbacks that everyone had their eyes on, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. The way we broke it down yesterday was willing to give Trey Lance the benefit of the doubt in the backup quarterback competition. I think in my mind yesterday, Sam Darnold moved into that second slot. Not that it's over and done with, but is that the way that you saw Sunday playing out?
I would say yes and no. Sam Darnold certainly looked significantly better than Trey Lance looked. Sam Darnold was going against a different defense, and so I would say if you were just going based on the preseason game, yes, he put himself ahead. But you have to remember that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers coaches have a lot of practice tape and a lot of film, and they go back through that film, and they're looking for things that probably aren't just how many touchdowns they score, like how many passes they completed. I think with Trey, there were some issues. He was sacked 4 times. I think 2 of those were on the O-line, 2 of those were on Trey. That touchdown was real lucky. It should have been an interception. There was another should have been an interception later. But Kyle Shanahan said on his Monday call that there were some positive things that he saw. But yes, we have not seen Trey Lance play in a game in a long time. And I think that's the thing with Trey Lance, and that's why the opportunity may just never come in San Francisco, because he needs reps, and he needs to play. And something Sam Darnold has is years of experience over Trey Lance. The 49ers know what they're getting, that should something happen to Brock Purdy and you have to bring another guy in, they know what they're getting in Sam Darnold. I think the ceiling is higher for Trey Lance, but he still needs those reps and playing time. Sunday was not a fabulous day for him. He had a couple really nice throws, but no, it certainly was not a fabulous day. But again, there's a lot of practice tape. There's a lot of practices, and there are 2 more games to go. But if we're going purely on Sunday, then I would agree Sam Darnold did probably put himself a little bit ahead in the QB2 race.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tracy. We were just having a discussion about the defensive side of the ball and some guys that maybe Niner fans took, for granted, and they're not here anymore on the defensive side. So we talked about depth. And Kinlaw, every year, Tracy, is going to be that breakout year or supposed to, and I'm rooting for him. But I told Evan, I didn't like him telling the reporter, and it's just my opinion, oh, watch out now, here I come. I'm like, you got to do it first and then talk about it. But what did you see from Kinlaw, who, if this could be the year, Tracy, it would go a long way for this defense. What did you see from him Sunday against the Raiders? Saturday.
Well, it's an interesting thing with Kinlaw is I didn't see a lot and I didn't notice a lot, and I actually don't think that was a positive. He wasn't huge on my radar on Sunday, not my radar on Sunday, in terms of what he was doing. I'm with you. I'm rooting for him too. So I didn't see much. He didn't stand out to me. There were guys that stood out to me on defense. There were quite a few of them. He did not. And that says something to me. But again, there are 2 more preseason games. This is another guy who's kind of been, in and out of the lineup. But no, I don't think Sunday was the kind of breakout day you were hoping for Javon Kinlaw. But I always do take the preseason with a grain of salt. And so I think that's why Kyle Shanahan really likes these joint practices. And obviously these preseason games matter, but what they see in practice, I think becomes maybe just as important for the 49ers. But you're right, there wasn't a lot there. We saw Cleveland Farrell. His name came up a lot. We saw him do good things. We saw Kerry Hyder. I didn't see a ton from Javon Kinlaw, unfortunately.
Tracy Sandler with us, founder and CEO of Fangirl Sports, has been covering the 49ers for a long time, very knowledgeable, has been at all the practices, has been at the preseason so far. And speaking of preseason, Tracy, you mentioned how practice might hold just as much weight as the games themselves. My partner and I have been talking about whether or not Brock Purdy, now that he's been cleared to throw 3 days in a row, whether he needs to play or not in the preseason, and whether Kyle Shanahan is going to use him. I know he's referenced it, but I just want to ask, do you think that Brock Purdy needs to play in the preseason? And if so, what would that look like?
If it were me, and I am not in charge of this, so take this with a grain of salt too. If it were me, I think I'd want him in there for a series in a preseason game. I wouldn't want him in there for a half. I don't even think I'd want him in there for a full quarter. I think I'd want him in there for one series, see how long that series goes, maybe two. But, Brock Purdy also has not played a ton of NFL games, but he's certainly played enough of them, and he's proven what he can do. He's coming off that elbow injury. He is clear to practice 3 days in a row this week, but I think the 49ers are going to be really, really careful with him. And they have other quarterbacks on that roster that really do need those reps, that they really have to see what they can do. So I'm sure we would see him. I would imagine we would see him a little bit. But again, if it were me, I would say 1 to 2 series max, because it's just not worth the risk. And you know what he can do in a game, and he's had the practice.
Tracy, I love my job. I get out of bed every day, and I just try to be true to myself. I don't have any inside connections, and I just share, what's in my heart. So I'm asking you about Bosa, because yesterday I went on a lightweight rant, and I just thought, you know what? This guy's done everything under the sun. They had a year to know that this guy is their anchor. What's taking so long? Can you just share with us in the Tracy world? Is it a big deal? Are you curious? Are you shocked, or nothing to see here?
I think it's nothing to see here. He's going to be here. They're not letting Nick Bosa go for anything. So whatever they're figuring out or having to work out, I know they've been really tight-lipped about it. There have been no leaks. There's been none of that. They will figure it out. Nick Bosa is obviously somebody who is going to, whenever he does get to Santa Clara, he will be in shape. He'll need a few weeks to get into football shape, but they're still in a good position in terms of getting him there. And as Kyle Shanahan said, he doesn't feel like Nick Bosa's really ever had a preseason, and he's done just fine. So I understand the frustration. I understand being at a point now where fans might be like, so Nick Bosa, what's happening here? But I don't think there's anything to see here. And I would be about as shocked as I would be about anything in the world if Nick Bosa wasn't here. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. He'll be here soon, I'm sure.
Tracy Sandler, founder and CEO of Fangirl Sports, covering the 49ers, joining us here on 95.7 The Game. In the Monday Morning Quarterback, written by Albert Breer, he talked about how Shanahan kind of basically said that it took him 3 games to realize that Brock Purdy was, the real deal, or that had it, the way that John Lynch has said that Brock Purdy has it. Did it take you 3 regular season games to realize, or when did you come around to the idea that Brock Purdy could potentially be a franchise quarterback for this team? I know he's still got a lot to prove, and the injury might get, in the way a little bit. But when did you kind of realize that Brock Purdy had it?
I would say 3. I would agree with Kyle Shanahan, and he knows more than I do about football, that's for sure. But I would definitely agree with him on the 3 games. And I really thought it was impressive after Miami, because no, he didn't start that game, but he came in very early. And that Dolphins team, though they fell apart after that 49ers game, that Dolphins team coming into the 49ers game was a pretty hot team with a really good defense and had won a ton of games. So I thought he was very impressive in that game. But that 3rd game was the Thursday night game against Seattle, where Brock Purdy came in on a short week with an injury and played extremely well to give the 49ers the NFC West championship. I remember that touchdown to Kittle, where he dropped back. I think he looked left first. He looked right, threw to Kittle, and I thought that was an incredible play. And kind of for me, it was that moment. I'd already been impressed with him, but in that moment, I was like, I think this guy's their guy. I think he could be their franchise quarterback. And I go back to last year when they cut the roster to 53, and they decided to keep Purdy over Nate Sudfeld, who they had given a guaranteed contract to earlier in the offseason. And one of the things the 49ers said was he had certainly earned his way onto the roster, and they were very concerned that had they let him go, he would not have been on their practice squad. So they were clearly pretty excited about him at that point. And I always thought that was interesting. And at the time, I wasn't sure, but it really stood out to me because they had given Sudfeld a decent guaranteed contract. And so I was impressed. He did, earn his way onto the roster. But I think it was that game and it was that moment. And I thought, this guy's got it. He does. He has it. And even his first press conference, and I am very aware that games are not won and lost in press conferences, but even his first press conference after that Miami game, the way he came in, just so confident, as if this is just kind of who he was and something he'd been doing. I was impressed with him then, but I'm going to agree with Kyle Shanahan. That third game, that said it to me.
Well, I know that you're going to get a chance to see Brock Purdy in practice today. So, Tracy, I appreciate you making some time for us before you get to that. Thank you for your insight, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. That's Tracy Sandler, founder and CEO of Fangirl Sports, covering the San Francisco 49ers.